if he made $20 billion on a single internet company being added to Tencent, what it would make him if 15 companies were added to the Nikkei. Malcolm closed his eyes, opened them, closed them again. He waited a few seconds and opened them and stared right at the computer screen. The glowing green numbers hadn't changed and they didn't lie. His heart raced as he had trouble swallowing. His feet once again the floor beneath his chair. It was after 9 at night and the office was empty, and still he was trying to control himself, trying not to jump up and scream and tell the whole fucking world that he had uncovered, because it wasn't just big, it was enormous. It was on scale never seen before, just in Tokyo, but on Wall Street, London, anywhere. It would be quite simple. The biggest deal in the history of the world. It was going to happen. It was going to happen within 2 weeks. He jabbed at Princeton button on keyboard and listened to the printer in the accounts room rumble to life. As he waited for the pages to print, he went through it all times again in his hand. For the moment, 2 weeks earlier than Teddy Six had first advanced the idea of the chairlift at the indoor sky slope to private lunch meeting he had just attended 6 hours ago. Sears had driven him the first thread of an idea on what Sears himself had thought was a little more than one innocent bit of news, and he had followed that vine all the way to its potential. His lunch hadn't been with trader or financier. He has been with a journalist whose friend, a former sales rep from Barings, a young Japanese man who was full-time writer for the Japanese financial newspaper. The younger writer wasn't a banker and probably hadn't understood the full significance of the question Malcolm had asked. His answers had crossed any legal and ethnic lines, but they were enough to tell Malcolm that his suspicions were correct. Sears mustn't were more than a simple pipe dream. There was a good chance, a very good chance, that they were going to come to pass, at least in part, soon, and according to that journalist, sooner than anyone could have guessed, the Nikkei 225 was going to change the better present to the current Japanese economy. That economy was now full of billion-dollar tech companies, 15 of which were big enough to end up on Nikkei exchange. When that happened, the mutual funds tracking the Nikkei would respond in exact same the tracker fund tracking the Tencent had responded by buying shares of new companies and selling shares of company being replaced. By this time, it wasn't going to be just a single company like Pacific Century Cyberworks, but there wasn't going to be a private placement of shares by a biller. It was going to be more than a dozen companies. What Malcolm had surprised from his conversation with the journalist. From he didn't say that he did say it was going to happen at once. Malcolm turned off his computer, rose from his chair, and hastily made his way to the accounts room. His back still ached a bit from his accident. Now, months ago, his hands and face were entirely healed. He found his printout in the printer close to the door and scanned through the numbers one more time. He had calculated everything down to the penny based on what he thought AC could buy, where they could buy it and they could sell, that they could sell it. He knew exactly they would take and what they would have to risk to get there. The risk would be phenomenal, but the gains would be unthinkable. Clutching the printout in his hands, he hurried back toward his desk. He didn't notice the figure sitting in his chair until he was within a few feet. Carney spun to face him, and the half-smile twisting across his lips. "You've been busy," he said simply. Malcolm had told anyone about lunch, and he'd think Carney knew that he'd been up to, but sooner or later he was going to try to find out. He liked to keep tabs on his traders. They were an investment like Nikkei derivatives and loan pages. They were avenues toward profit. "I know you're working on something, Malcolm. I think it's something big. Am I right?" Malcolm took a deep breath. He had rehearsed this in head a dozen times over the past week. He hadn't told anyone what he was going to plan, not even Sai, because this wasn't anyone else. This was between him and Carney. Репетитор по скайпу, Smart Teacher 197.